Make sure my door's locked. Otherwise, my dad will walk in, guaranteed.
Let me go get us onto Facebook and I'll be back.
All right.
So I heard it's been raining for like 24 hours plus straight, right? Like this up there.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're working on like 48 hours now. Getting close to that.
Wow. I wish we could have spaced it out a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah, totally. It's when you get any more than like 4 or 5 inches, you have to be real careful about things just kind of blowing out. We went from 1.5 inches to almost 9 inches now over the last couple of days.
Not good.
It always seems like, you know, the forecast goes for a tons of rain. You never believe it until you see it. And this is one of the ones that actually, you see 5-6 inches on the forecast and then it actually comes out and you're trying to figure out what to do with it.
Yeah. We haven't even had it yet.
Yeah, totally.
It hasn't even come down here yet. It's still sunny outside, partly cloudy, so.
Yeah, it seems to me too that the rains are coming a lot later in the season over the past couple of years too.
Absolutely.
Whether that's like climate change or what.
I think last year going into January, February, we had a couple inches.
Yeah.
All righty.
Right. And then it rained up into May too.
Yeah,
so.
just dumped.
Cool. We've got Martha.
Yeah, crazy time.
Joining us from the bitter cold Columbus, Ohio. Looks like they just opened Turley Uberath Inn from 2016 to join in on our show today. So thanks for joining us again, Steve and Martha. And how many inches of rain have we gotten this week? Well, Brennan, you just said you got what, 9 over the last 48 hours?
7.5.
7. Yeah.
We're probably around
7.5.
like 5.5, I think.
Wow. Yeah. And my backyard gauge, I think I was at 5.5 or something like that. So in the last day and a half or so, 2 days. So it's coming down. It's not supposed to stop until tomorrow. So that's a good thing we need it. Although we're going to be talking a little bit about why all of this rain all at once while it can be a blessing, can be a curse, I suppose. So we'll get to that here in just a minute. I'm waiting to see where we're at with Facebook and if it's caught up to us. All right. We are a go. Very cool. All right, everyone. Thanks again for joining us for another Paso Wine Hour. I'm Chris Toronto with the Paso Robles Wine Country Alliance. And today we are talking about the Winter Vineyard. It looks like a bunch of brown sticks coming out of the ground, but in actuality, there's still a lot happening out there. It's a really good time in the year to take advantage of dormancy and get maybe a few things done, or maybe you're just doing what you need to do because the weather is saying that you need to do it, as we'll be talking about with the rain and everything. I've got 3 panelists here joining me from 3 different areas of the Paso Robles wine region, 3 fresh faces, as a matter of fact, because I don't think any of you guys have been on a previous show before. And so I'm really happy to introduce Brendan Stover from Turley Wine Cellars. We've got Anthony Rebely with Simeon Wines and the Rebely family. And we've got Anthony LaDuca with Ecluse Wines. Let's introduce Brennan first. Brennan, why don't you say hello and tell us a little bit about yourself and where you're from.
My name's Anthony LaDuca. I'm the winemaker at Ecluse Wines. So we're a small boutique winery in the Willow Creek district, Paso Robles, just off Kyler Canyon Road. We do about 3,500 cases a year, so pretty small production, I think, compared to everyone else here today. But what that we do anywhere from 10 to 12 different wines, a lot of really small, 200 case things, but a pretty good variety. I think our staples are our Cab Syrah and our Zinfandel. So a little Rhone, a little Bordeaux, and then a little classic Paso.
Cool. Thank you, Anthony. And Brennan Stover from Turley.
Yeah, hello everybody. My name is Brennan, and I'm the vineyard manager for Turley Wine Cellars, and we specialize in old vine, Zinfandel, Petite Syrah, a little bit of Carignan, and we dry farm the vineyards. The vineyards are farmed organically, and we actually have 3 wineries, one in Paso, one up in Napa, one in Amador, and we work with, it ranges, but it's about 40 different vineyards throughout the state of California. And yeah, dry farmed, organic, old vines is our specialty.
Right on. Thank you, Brennan. Anthony Rebely of San Simeon and Rebely family. Welcome.
Thank you, Chris. So I'm part of the 4th generation in our family business. So we've been in business since 1917. And so certainly Paso Robles has become a very important region for us. We have 5 estate vineyards in Paso now, and a beautiful new winery we built in 2016. So, really excited to be a part of the area, and just trying to expose the area more and more to new consumers who just don't know about Paso Robles, and who are maybe thinking Napa is the only place to get wine from in California. So that's, I think, the mission statement for our family, certainly. But we sustainably farm all of our vineyards and are certified as such. And our winery actually is certified sustainable as well. So kind of a unique twist there, having both sides of the coin, if you will. So glad to be here.
Yeah, right on. Thank you, Anthony. And you're down in LA, right now, and you have a tasting room and a whole facility down there as well.
Correct.
And it's one of the oldest in the state, I guess you could say.
One of the few left, yes, from the old days.
Right on. And so today, once again, our topic is about the Winter Vineyard. And so we're actually gonna have a PowerPoint for the most part on this one, because we really wanted to try to help bring you, the viewer, into what is happening out there. And so I asked all 3 of these guys to not only share some wines, which we'll get into here in a little bit, but also what's happening in the vineyard for them right now, like some active pictures that they've taken at their places. And so I'm going to pull up, I think the first one is going to be Anthony LaDuca. Actually, give me just a second here because it's not ready. So
No problem.
here we go. So before we get fully into the presentation, let's give everybody an idea of where some of your vineyards are. And so for Anthony LaDuca, you're over here in the Willow Creek district, kind of over almost on the edge kind of Willow Creek and the Templeton Gap district, if I remember.
Yeah, we're pretty close to Adelaida too. We're right in that little pinch between, kind of that little pinch of pink that comes across. We're right around there. So essentially we can see vineyards in the Adelaida district and the Templeton district.
And down in there, yeah, right in that little bottleneck that happens there.
Yeah.
And then Turley, you guys are down here, right also in the Willow Creek, but very much also really affected by Templeton Gap. It's kind of funny. It's a spot where when I look at it, I think to myself, it's almost interchangeable. But you guys are right over here off of this little hump here, if I remember correctly, for the Pizzeni Vineyard. But then you also have vineyards up deeper in the Willow Creek here, and then also Templeton Gap with the Ducey. Is that right, Brennan?
Yeah, correct. Yeah, we work with 3 different vineyards in those areas, and the winery with the Petite Vineyard, with the estate Petite Vineyard, is in the Willow Creek district, but we get a gigantic influence from the Templeton Gap district because we're real close to the 46 West, and we had a lot of coastal influence that gets funnels through the mountains there.
Yeah. And then Anthony Rebeli, now I visited your place out in Creston, so I'll start with that one. But that is out here, I think practically right near like the R or so of Creston, I'm going to guess, that where we were at before. But then you have other vineyards in other portions of the AVA.
Correct. So we have the Rebeli Crescent Vineyard, yeah, pretty much right near the town of Creston on La Panza. And then a little bit further east, out on Highway 41, we have the Creston Highlands Vineyard, which is a unique property in that it's all calcareous soils in Creston, which is not super common. And then we have 3 estate vineyards if you just cross over into El Pomar district, that are over off of South El Pomar, and one over off of Geneseo near kind of where it heads towards what's his name? I'm blanking on the winery, but right where Creston Road hits Geneseo. So yeah, so that's that. We kind of were in those 2 districts, and Creston's the wild, wild west in many, many ways, and we're kind of hoping to be the pioneer in that region and show people what it can do.
Awesome. Excellent. Thank you. So we have a bit of an establishment of where all these vineyards are at. Let's get into, this would be over at Ecluse. So Anthony LaDuca.
Yeah, so this is it's a shot of our Syrah. So our main things happening in the vineyard currently are our pruning process. So we usually go through a little bit later in the year. This year, since we hadn't had any moisture, we really don't have a cover crop going quite as much as you can see. I don't know if you can see that picture at all, any little sprouts coming up. We have a tiny bit of cover crop, but essentially what we were doing is, since things were so slow, we had a small crew of about three or so people going through, and what they're doing is just slowly going through, pruning down to 2 buds on there and just making their way. And as we get later in the season, we'll bring in a large crew and just have them get through and knock it out, usually in about a week or 2. With 3 people, they go through fairly slow. It can take up to a month or 2. So just to kind of keep some people in work and make sure there's something for them to do, we started with our Syrah on the front there. And it's actually a little bit different than anywhere else on our property. Our Syrah is the only thing with this split canopy, so with the 2 parallel cordons. Everything else is just your normal traditional VSP. That's to help with a lot of the vigor of that particular varietal, especially on our property. And then one of the other things, as they're going through, with these being some of our original plantings, we're dealing with a lot of Eutypa. So a lot of, as the arms are starting to get diseased and starting to die back from past pruning wounds, we're going through and cutting off any dead wood, going all the way back to essentially to the trunk, or as far back as we can tell is diseased, and then laying down some of that old growth to be our new cordons going forward. So it's a constant battle to make sure that our vigor is kind of maintaining. Ideally we catch it before our vines are completely dead, so we don't have to do a lot of replanting. But at this time also we'll go through and if a vine is totally shot, we'll go through and we'll actually pull the vine and take notes of how many new vines we'll need to put into the ground for next year or for the spring.
The timing that you were saying on pruning, and because you don't have much for cover crop, but does the soil have anything to do with timing for it too? Because I'm noticing that this looks like kind of like maybe a clay loamy type of soil with a little bit of calcareous that's probably a lot more underneath. But is it any different in any different portions of your vineyard?
I would say it's probably majority this year is everything's pretty uniformly unsprouted because of our real lack of rain at this point. It really, you can barely see it even if you get down there and look at the grass. It's just starting to pop up in the rows. Normally at this point in the year, we'd have a pretty established cover crop. So I think it's predominantly rainfall, but we do notice in different parts of the property, it'll sprout up a little quicker or a little bit slower. And so this is our cab. And as you can see there, it's still not a lot of cover crop. There might be a little bit, you can see a little bit of green in between the row, off to the side there. So it might be a little bit more ahead of the Syrah. And then you can kind of see with this front and center vine that's on there right now, that is one vine that we had cut off one of the arms there on the right-hand side, and we had laid down a new cord on the year before. And so we'll go back as far as we have to on there and then just start training up new things, because you get a lot, once you have those established roots, you really don't want to replant anything, but it does have to happen. You can see in that picture also in the row behind that one, there's 2 new plants that we put in last year that are.
Oh yeah.
So it's kind of a constant struggle of maintaining, the health of your vineyard and not doing too much also.
Yeah. You said that these are older ones. Now, are they on their own root or these have rootstock?
They're on rootstock, yeah. They're all on, I think everything on the property is on 1103. But these are part of the original planting. So Pam and Steve, the owners, they planted the property in 96. So we're coming up on, 25 years or so that they've been growing. So nothing near super old, 100-year-old, 50-year-old old vines in or anything like that. But they've been around long enough that they're starting to pick up some issues.
Yeah. And I love with this shot, you can kind of see some new plantings over in the distance as well. So lots happening in this part of the AVA, but what's happening here?
Absolutely. So we have right across the street there, that's now Onyx owns that property. So they're getting ready. I think the vines there you can see on the back left, that's established stuff, but they're getting ready to actually build a winery on the top of the hill there. That's going to be one of their new sites. Not too far left of this, if you're looking, the Beckett's have a vineyard that they planted, I think 2 years ago out there. There's another vineyard that's just being ready to go. It's a kind of a new player to the game coming out and wants to have a little property. So we're keeping an eye on that if it's, some fruit that we want to pop being so close to us. And then Stefan Arceo has a few places, or has a place planted maybe just south of us there. And I think you can actually see a little bit of Terry Ho, TH, on the top end of that vineyard. So a lot of, there's a few people that have been there for a while and a lot of new stuff going in.
Yeah. This is the Onyx established. This would be the Onyx new stuff. Terry Ho over here.
Right.
As I understand, Stefan is actually on the other side of this little hill. And then over here to the left of this image off screen is where Peachy Canyon and the Beckett's have planted some new stuff as well. Yeah. Cool. How long ago did you take this picture?
This was maybe 2 weeks ago, week and a half ago.
Okay.
Right after we decided we were gonna.
Oh yeah.
It's gonna be the winter vineyard, so we went out and started snap. So we do have a little bit more cover crop now, because we did get a little sprinkle that came in that I think helped push things up a little bit, but it's definitely gonna be going after this rain. I see we're supposed to get some sunshine, and I think everything's gonna pop right up.
Yeah. By the weekend, we should get a little sunshine, and then I think we got a little break until maybe Wednesday or so. We get another dash of rain.
Yeah.
So, very cool. We'll come back around to you, talk a little bit more about your wine and everything here in a minute. But I think we're going to switch gears and go over to Creston right now. And Anthony Rebele.
Yeah, so this is the Rebele Creston property that you came to visit, Chris. So we have a home on the property, 1930s farmhouse that we completely remodeled right there in the background there past the lake. So we do have a natural lake. We fill it as needed, but it's a bird sanctuary. So we have Canada geese, and we have all kinds of wildlife that love to hang out there. But, one showing of this picture was really just to show the erosion control. So if you look in the front of the road, as you start going down that hill, that's all straw. So we do use a specific straw that helps to bind into the dirt just to really create a better control of water rushing off. And that's a multi-year process. I mean, we're doing that frankly every year, especially on younger vineyards. You really have to, but now even on this, we just feel that again, it's a lot easier to do this and prevent problems than not have erosion control, especially with what's going on right now with all this rainfall in a very short period of time. And we also run the wattles. I don't know if I have a picture later on of the wattles, but those are, the big, well, if not, we can go to those, but it's a big round tube of straw basically that you run across the road. And that just helps divert, again, water from just carrying out your roads as well. So yeah, it's a big part of, pruning certainly is the biggest part of as we talked about, the winter job chore list, but erosion control is certainly very important and, part of the whole sustainability process. It's part of that whole theme. So here, on the right side, these are some older vines. These are from 1998. They have not been pruned yet. Now they probably are, but this was probably a week or so ago. And then on the left, some younger plantings that we just put in 2016. And so those are all the vertical shoot position. And that's kind of where we've gone on pretty much everything. 8x4 spacing, just to really tighten and hopefully have less load per vine is kind of our approach. Is by having more vines, you're not stressing out, one vine to have very long cordons and put out too much fruit. And so that's been a process on this property. This is also the Creston property, just looking up at one of the oak trees that we always keep nicely manicured. And go ahead, Chris.
Yeah. Hey, I have a question for you as far as, and we're going to obviously talk about cover crop right here, but when do you start to seed with cover crop? Like you took this picture probably about a week or so ago, but when did you actually seed it and everything?
Yeah, well, our vineyard manager, Lee Allegre, he hit it pretty hard, late December, early January, and that's always a crapshoot. But as Brennan was saying earlier in our conversation, the rain seemed to be coming later, just as if that's some new weather pattern, who knows? And so, if you think about it, I've been doing this over 20 years now. I remember rain in November, right? And you'd have to be trying to get out and seed, and it was impossible. But it's kind of fallen where hopefully we can get things in December, and then you'll see this. So this is just coming out. And again, with all this rain, you're probably going to it's going to look like Ireland real quickly here. So
yeah, what is it? What seed mixture are you putting in here?
Yeah, it's a mix. I know it's got, we always have some barley just for erosion because we like to hold, the soil together. But then we'll do some fescue, and we always put in some of the legumes for the nitrogen to add back into the soil. So it's kind of a mix, if you will, that Lee likes to throw out there for, kind of multiple purposes.
Yeah. The same for you, Anthony Leduca, when it comes to the mixture?
Yeah, we're pretty big mix. I think it's predominantly barley oats, and some vetch, and then some other little things kind of thrown in there.
Cool. Here's a shot of all of that straw. I think I had it out of order there for you, Anthony.
No worries. Yeah, that's this. I think it's called oat straw. I forget what kind. It's a special type of straw that we get, and it again just binds really well. Almost forms almost like adobe, right? It almost creates like an adobe on the roads over time. Which really helps to keep things together.
And that's a pretty steep hill right there. Is this still the Creston vineyard?
No, I think this is over at Madalena. So this is my grandmother, vineyard named for my grandmother, and she just turned 98 in December. So she's doing great. Just got COVID shot #1 a few weeks ago with no problem. So that's good. But yeah, this is her vineyard in the El Pomar district, and this is all Linicolodo soil, so it is calcareous derived soils, and pretty much all of our properties are hillsides. Actually, all of them are, and varying degrees. And so some properties we can mechanically harvest certain parts, and then some are just too steep and we just can't. So that's another reason for the vertical shoot position, is to give ourselves the option of machine harvesting where the hills aren't too steep.
So you have a number of properties here in Paso, and not like I want to talk about out of area Paso, but do you have then vineyards outside of Paso as well?
We do. So we have 4 properties in Monterey, so in the Arroyo Seco and San Lucia Highlands area, and that's really where we grow, cooler climate varietals, Pinot Noir, Chardonnay, Pinot Grigio, Riesling. And then up in Napa, we do have a small vineyard in Rutherford, which is Cabernet and a little bit of Petite Verdot. And here's some, pre-cultivating. We do some ripping, every year between the rows and get in there and disc things up and then go in and seed things. So just, part of that process every year. And you asked about timing, and one of the hardest pieces is if we had had this rain a week ago, you wouldn't have these pictures because these tractors wouldn't be out there. So
Yeah, exactly. And oftentimes now you guys end up like ripping the earth there, so to kind of prep it for rain too, right? So that way more infiltration happens.
correct. Yeah, part of it's just to break up any, hard layers that have formed, but it's also to just create better root, happiness, right? Let those roots, especially the feeder roots that are up high, let them be able to really get their maximum spread and keep those vines happy, because there is compaction, whether it's even with tractors, modern tractors, but mechanical harvesters, all these things do cause compaction over time. And so we like to break it up and give that soil some breathing.
So when I came out to visit you, you had a funny story. So this is kind of off topic, kind of on topic, about the gates. So we have the Stefano Vineyard gate, and then we have the Maddalena Vineyard gate. And I was hoping that maybe you could tell us that story real quick, because it's
Sure.
hilarious.
I'll keep it quick, but so my grandmother, as I mentioned, she's 98 and doing great. And my grandfather, he passed away about a year and a half ago, but he was almost 98 when he passed. But about 10 years ago, he'd had some health issues, and he was convinced that he was going to go meet his maker, which he didn't. He lasted another 8 years, but he had a bucket list, and it was a very substantial bucket list. So his list was remodeling the tasting room in Los Angeles. He wanted a new winery in Paso Robles. But one of his was we hadn't owned any vineyards at that time in Paso Robles. So one was to own a vineyard in Paso Robles. So we found this property on Almond Drive in the El Pomar area, unplanted. It was actually an old pig farm at one time, and then it was just cattle grazing. So we began developing this property, and I get a phone call from my grandmother, and she says, "Oh, I saw some photos of the vineyard that you're doing, and it's so great. I know your grandfather is so proud. Where's my vineyard?" And I said, "Well, Nona," Nona is grandmother in Italian. I said, "Nona, it took us this long to find one vineyard to plant, Nona. I don't know what I'm going to be able to find, but I'll do my best." So again, is it divine intervention? Who knows? But literally across the street on Almond Drive, another property came up for sale. It was actually an old abandoned almond orchard, and we had to pull out 6,000 trees that were dead, pretty much, and plant. And so we began to develop that vineyard, and so she's doing better. So we finished his. We built a gate, and I get another call, and she says, "I love that gate that you built for your grandfather, but I saw a photo of this ugly green gate that's in front of my vineyard, and I don't understand." And I said, "Where's my gate?" I said, "Well, no, we wait till the vineyard's developed before we put in a fancy gate, because we don't want any bulldozers hitting the gate. So when we're ready, we'll be matching." So anyway, lo and behold, they have his and hers vineyards and his and hers gates. True story.
I love that. That's so funny. Man, especially that, where's the green gate? I could just imagine. I had a noni named Maddalena as well. And that's just, I could hear it. So that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that one.
Of course.
Brennan, let's get on to what's happening with you guys. Now, this is obviously not a winter vineyard, but this gives us a good lay of the land.
Yeah, is that the aerial picture of the Petite Vineyard?
It is, yeah.
Okay, there, I see it now. Yeah, so that's the Petite Vineyard. It's about 45 acres. It's I'd say 95% Zinfandel. It was planted in 1924, and it's dry farmed. it's got, you can see it when they planted it, they planted the blocks to be very aspect oriented. And so there's about 20 to 25 different blocks. And it was very smart on their part to do that because the blocks all ripen at very different times. And it's dry farmed, it's certified organic. The spacing of the vineyard is 10 by 10. And you can see it's very steep. And so kind of the blocks that are in the front they have like, it ranges from 35 to 45% grade steepness. And the crazy thing with that is all of our tractors are crawler tractors with tracks, and we cultivate it going up and down, which that's in itself pretty, you have to have an experienced tractor driver, but we also cultivate it driving it horizontally. And with the different blocks, we usually do anywhere between 16 to 20 different picks, ferment all those lots separately, and then over the months, evaluate them, and then pick the best ones to fit into the Petite Vineyard blend.
I know that I've stood on the top of that hill before, and it looks down pretty much towards Highway 46. And it looks truly like if you take one wrong step, you are going to tumble straight down a hill. You could practically launch yourself off on a hang glider if you wanted to off of that hill. And I have to imagine that back in 1917, they were planting that by hand. That's just crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And the other thing too, that was kind of pre-tractors, and so they were farming it with horses. And you know, I'd love to go back in time and see how that worked as far as motivating those horses to go straight up and down those hillsides. But yeah, and it's, you know, there's one of the steepest blocks, we call it the bastard block, just because it's a bastard to farm, you know. And it's pretty insane. And then that picture right there, so that's an old vine. We just we haven't started pruning yet. We try to delay the pruning as late as possible, just for frost protection in the spring. And when you go in and you prune the vineyard, it tends to activate the vine, the clock of the vine, and so we tried to delay that clock from having the buds come out as late as possible. And so that's an example of an almost 100-year-old vine. And I pruned it just a couple of days ago, just to give an example. And you can see that it's carrying only 6 spur positions. And so not a lot of spur positions. And so in a really good year, tonnage on an old vine like that would be like 2 tons per acre. And then on not so good years, it drops down to as little as like 1/2 ton per acre. So there's huge fluctuations as far as tonnage with these old vines. And the spacing is 10 by 10 spacing. And yeah, in this picture, you can see 46, and that's pretty much where all the Templeton Gap influence funnels through there.
Yeah, this little hillside right here, Highway 46 wraps around and kind of comes and goes in between it. And I think that little piece of hillside and how it's, you know, basically stops as abruptly as it is very emblematic of what the Templeton Gap is all about. It's not this perfect notch, but rather, you know, a lowering of elevation, of overall elevation in this kind of 6-mile range of the Santa Lucias. And so it's just this hillside, I think, is always, you know, just a really good example of how elevation actually can change.
Yeah, definitely. And the interesting thing with that is as the crow flies, we're about 8 miles from the ocean. And so the climate is definitely a lot cooler. And with working with 40 different vineyards between the 3 Turley wineries, we're usually the last last winery to pick fruit. So the climate's definitely a lot cooler than up north in Napa and Amador.
Yeah, I see that you also have
And
those rolls that Anthony
the other,
was talking about here.
yeah, exactly. So so for us, because we cultivate the vineyard, erosion prevention is super important for us. And so the first thing we do is we cover crop seed the vineyard, and we do it block per block on a contour, so that you have these horizontal lines that will prevent water from rushing down. And then we go in there and we straw all the roads and straw certain rows within the blocks. And then what you can see is basically it's a diversion culvert ditch that goes from the top of the vineyard underneath the ground all the way down to the bottom. And they have drop-ins at every point in the middle. And what we have the guys do when we go out there, we'll actually hand dig diversion ditches at a 5% grade. We have an inclinometer that we use, and it basically captures the water and then slowly directs it to the drop-ins. And so that's it's a pretty intensive erosion control program that we do for that.
And we got a different vineyard here that is obviously not in the winter, but talk about erosion.
Yeah, is that a picture of the bastard block? I have a little bit of a lag on.
I think it's your vineyard.
Oh, no. Okay, yeah, no. So yeah, this is my vineyard, which it's located in the Adelaide district. And what I did was I wanted to stay true to dry farming, but I wanted to really push the limits. And so I did a spacing of 3 by 7 feet. And so in a typical dry farm vineyard, you have a spacing of 10 by 10, which you get 435 plants per acre. And with my spacing, you get 2,000 plants per acre. And the interesting thing about this picture is the vineyard faces this quarry that is still active. And it's basically, I take people out to the vineyard and I show them the quarry and I say, there's 600 feet down of what my soil profile is. And it's basically siliceous, silica-based ground. And they use that for road base. And the way the vines, that system of training is called echelon. And what I do is I train the trunk to be about 1 foot off the ground, and then I prune it to only just two bud spurs. And then as the vines grow, I tie them up the stake. And it's I didn't invent that style. That's, if you go to the Rhone, northern Rhone, you'll see it in Cornas and Hermitage. And what Anthony had said earlier, my goal was to have more vines per acre, but less fruit per vine. And so each of those vines only carry at max like 4 to 5 clusters.
And dry farmed as well. I mean,
and it is, yeah, it's completely dry farmed. And it was kind of one of those, I planted in the heart of the drought. I planted that vineyard in 2013, and we had 5 years of drought, and it was basically a leap of faith, because planting that type of density with being just dry farmed, it was like it either is going to work or it's not going to work. And so far it's been really successful. And the key thing for me was, okay, with that type of tight spacing in a real rainy year, does it just create a jungle? Or in a drought, does it have enough power to grow? And so far the vines in both those situations have been extremely balanced. I've been really, really very pleased with that. And the other thing to note about that too is with siliceous grounds, you tend to not be able to retain a lot of acidity in the wines. And with this type of training system and being dry farmed and tight spacing and only having 4 or 5 clusters, I'm able to retain a good amount of acidity. So I've been really happy with just from like the like the lab analysis or the chemical analysis of the juice that I get from the fruit.
Let's get into
And that elevation is about 1,300 feet, so it's high elevation.
Got it. We'll revisit a little bit about your vineyard in a second when we taste through one of those wines. But I do want to get into a little bit of wine here. And also I wanted to have a look now that we're back over on this side of things. I can see some of the questions from the audience. And so we'll get to a few of those as well. So not to fear. But first up, though, Anthony LaDuca, you have this Syrah that we are tasting. It's a 2018 Syrah. Talk a little bit about this guy. Are you delayed also?
Yeah, sorry, it froze right when you started to. I went, oh,
Okay.
This is the timing. Okay. Yeah, so the 2018 Syrah, so it's our current release of that. We showed you the picture of the Syrah. It's on that split canopy. It's about 5 acres, so it's a pretty small planting. And one of the cool things with that is we're really able to manage. Usually we pick it over about a 2-week span. So we do anywhere from, I'd say, 4 to 8 picks or so in a given year on that. We'll do really small, 3 to 4.5 ton picks on it. It's one of the first things to ripen on our property. So the top of the hill right behind the winery on the south side of the vine, so that the split canopy, it's running east-west. So the southern side or the southern arm will actually get a little bit more sunlight than the north side. So we use that as kind of a balanced system. If the south side is a little overripe, maybe starts to lose some of the acidity that we want, a lot of times the north side will have that, so we'll pick them together. In some years, the south side is perfect, we'll pick that. 2 days later, the north side is perfect, we'll pick that and then make our way down the hill. But it's one of the more interesting harvests from our property just because it gives us so many different aspects. There's such a change in the vineyard in that varietal compared to anything else. So it's fun. We'll keep everything fairly separate going through. We do all of our fermentations in 1.5-ton macro bins. So basically each trailer load is going to be an individual lot where we'll do different yeast selections. It's all open top fermented. We just go through and kind of do our punch downs and regulate heat that way. And then we have a 2-ton basket press. So it's all basket pressed. And so we think we get really good, just good extraction out of it. We get the good tannin from it. In general, our Syrah comes in at a little bit higher pH than anything else on our property. We tend to get more at like a 3.8 or so. So not a huge acidity profile. It's enough to keep it kind of in balance in there, but not a whole lot of acidity. And then in general, one of the more unique things for us for our Syrah and really anything else that we do a little bit of Hungarian oak with that. And so we really like kind of that spicy, meaty aspect that brings, and it really works with that natural spicy profile of our Syrah. So it really helps to accentuate that. So this gives you a really good meaty, smoky, like dark flavor profile on that. So it's not as vibrant and fruit driven as some Syrahs can be in a little bit cooler climate.
Yeah, this one, it has a really good amount of like that black pepper spice that I think you come to expect from Syrahs out of Paso in general too. But its finish is so long and velvety. It's a very nice Syrah. I don't know what the other guys have to say about it, but I quite enjoy it.
This is like my go-to like barbecue or something with, if you're charring meat, like it's got that good smoky meat, like it kind of blends in with that.
Yeah, I like it a lot. I think it's not overblown. I mean, I remember 10 years ago plus, everybody was pushing the Shiraz-like style, if you will, and it was just overblown and jammy, and I like the balance, plus that meatiness, that bloody character, if you will, that people refer to, on Rhone wines. I think that's key, for Syrah. How much new oak, just out of curiosity, I was just wondering on the Hungarian, is it?
So we're at about 40% new oak, but I would say maybe only like a third or a quarter of that per year is Hungarian oak. So we do use predominantly French across the board. But this will see, if we do 16 barrels or so of this Syrah in a given year, maybe 3 barrels will be Hungarian oak.
Or yeah, I don't get a lot of it though. It doesn't overwhelm, which I like. The perfume, the nose is very nicely perfumed. I mean, when I first smelled it, I was even saying, how much new oak is there even on this? Because I like that it's not overwhelming.
Yeah, I think so. From this being a vineyard kind of discussion, one of the things that's kind of our ideology is your quality wines are coming from good quality fruit in the vineyard. And if you start out with bad fruit, like you're never going to make anything quality. We know from our property what the kind of fruit we're getting, the quality we're really happy with. And so it's much more showcasing that. And I think my job as a winemaker is just not messing up this amazing fruit that I'm getting every year. It's a lot easier of a job when you have this great fruit to start to work with. And it's less about covering it up with flavor profiles and more just finding what accentuates it and really showcases it.
I'd love to maybe get on to this Turley Pesenti Zin, the 2018, if we could. Classic Turley label, of course, down here at the bottom. Absolutely love it. And always such a neat bottle. But Brennan.
Yeah, so the 2018 Pesenti Zin, so the vines were planted in 1924. And again, the beauty about that vineyard is we do anywhere from 16 to 20 different Zinfandel picks just from that vineyard. And you get so many different characteristics because you have like the high elevation versus the low elevation. You have south exposure, you have north, east, west. And basically with the vineyard, with the wine, it's native yeast fermented. We use about 20% new oak, so just a smattering of new oak. It's about 80% French oak barrels. And you get a lot of red fruits from Pesenti Vineyard, and you get a lot of floral characteristics because the soil is extremely limestone based or calcareous. And so we retain a huge amount of acidity in the wines. And a lot of time when it comes to ripening, it's kind of a hurry up and wait game because you need the acidity to come down. And so with this particular vintage, it's carrying about 7.6 grams per liter as far as acidity. And so kind of I guess the real kind of sweet zone is usually 6.5. And so it's a little bit higher acidity, but that's the beauty of it. That's the beauty of this Paso Robles area is the limestone and retaining the acidity. And then the other thing with doing the 20 different picks and then evaluating all those different lots separately over the months, we get to pick and choose which ones go into the vineyard designate. And one of the really cool things that I feel about the Pesenti Vineyard is you get so much different tannin structure from all the different picks. And so for me, Pesenti Vineyard really has lots of complex kind of structured tannins to it.
Anthony,
and the wine's non-fine, non-filtered.
Sorry, I know we have that lag, but I was going to ask Anthony LaDuca to contribute a few words about this wine. I thought you were done, Brennan. My apologies.
Yeah, this is awesome. For me, I think there's a very kind of stereotypical Paso's in that you get that big fruit bomb thing, and this is very much not that. Really good balance of acidity, bright red fruit, and it's just such a nice kind of refreshing change of pace from what you expect from that big in your face in. I think in a lot of ways this is really kind of something that we try to shoot for with our Zin as well. So it's nice to see that when you get good acidity and vibrant fruit, it's got really good structure too, which is something I don't normally kind of have Zinfandel being, with these really nice, elegant tannins to it. So it's really good Zin.
And one of the things with Petite Vineyard, more so than a lot of the other vineyards, is Petite, the characteristic or the kind of the trademark characteristic for Petite Zinfandel is almost like the sweet tart, almost like the sweet tart candies. It pretty much every single vintage displays that sweet tartness characteristic, which is kind of the signature of Petite.
Yeah, I was telling Brennan before we went live that I've actually been a club member. You got to tell Larry Turley that, Brennan. I've been a club member for probably 15 years before they bought Petite, right? So I've been able to see the U-broth and the Petite and the Ducey and how different they are. But I love the pepper. I get like a white pepper that not like overly pepperly, but just that white pepper. And to me, that Ducey doesn't have that, the U-broth, it doesn't have that. So I think that's very just Petite specific, whether it's soil, terroir, whatever you want to call it. But I think that's what makes it very unique. Plus that acid, sweet tart, if you want to call it. But that peppery nose, especially, is just very unique.
I think the Petite Zin might actually have been one of the first wines I bought in the area when I first started visiting. Being able to come up and wine taste and visit was one of the very first things I went, man, there's something good going on there. I'm gonna take a bottle of that.
Nice. Yeah, nice. Yeah, back in 2000, I think it was 2006, we decided to before we'd made the vineyard blend, we decided to bottle the different picks and then taste through them. And the spiciness, believe it or not, the spiciness was really strongest on the north facing blocks. So like the really steep north facing blocks, like the bastard block, that had the most, that's where the spice comes from. So and I've been with Turley for 20 years now. And it's been one of the funnest things to just really learn all the different nuances of the vineyard.
So we normally only do 3 wines per show, but Brendan asked that we would show his wine, which is a Graciano, which I said, absolutely, let's do that. We had seen his vineyard in his part of the program here just a little bit ago. And so I'm going to ask Brennan, you to talk a little bit about this wine, Graciano, for one thing. I know Anthony Rebely has a question for you with regard to that, but talk about this wine.
Yeah, so the Graciano, so the interesting thing about this is that it was a mistake to plant the Graciano, because the Graciano was understood as being a certain clone of Monastrell. And what it really is, it's in France, they call it Moristel. And so there was some type of error that happened with that. And Moristel in Spain is called Graciano. And so I planted that, but it turned out to not be a mistake. It was something really serendipitous that happened, because the Graciano grows great, behaves really good, gives you great color, and retains really great acidity. And so I've got some more fallow land that I'm going to plant, and I'm going to plant more Graciano. And yeah, this wine, it's, I would describe it as having more of like blue type characteristics to it. And with the echelon training system and the very limited 4 to 5 clusters per vine, I feel like I'm able to get some really good tannin development on the fruit. And it's from an analysis standpoint, it has a TA of 6.5 grams per liter, and the pH is kind of right in the zone at 3.5. And that's the other thing when you plant a vineyard for the first time. You don't know exactly what the juice profile is going to be like. And it could be like super crazy and like, yeah, not good. and you put in all that input to do that. But I've been really very happy year after year of the juice panel or the numbers being right on the money. And the Graciano, because it is high elevation, ripens a little bit sooner. It's like at the tail end of September, beginning of October. But has really great kind of, I would say, almost like violet aromas to it.
Was that part of the whole, I think Austin Hope and Pastor Terry, everybody, they all got the Graciano. Was it all part of that whole same order?
It was. And so basically when I did my vineyard, I planted rootstock first and I let that grow. And it's a very vigorous rootstock. And then the next year, after a year of growth with the rootstock, I grafted field cuttings that I'd gotten from local guys around here. And yeah, it was totally part of that whole deal. And yeah, I love it, and I'm gonna plant more of it. It's just the color's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
And it retains acidity, and it has really nice violet aromas to it.
That has to be one of
we
the.
had the same issue. We planted Mourvedre or Mataro, if you will, or Monastrell, and guess what? But it was an interesting surprise, and we like it. We did a wine club bottling of Graciano, and the wine club loved it, and we love it as a blender even. And I think, you look at the climate of Spain where Graciano is typically grown is pretty warm. So I think it's actually a nice fit for Paso, frankly. So
I think. Oops.
Who else is making a single varietal Graciano in town? Brendan, you're doing it, but you guys, have you heard of anybody else doing it?
I know Austin Hope had one at some point. I don't know how available it is. I think it was a wine club wine for them. But I tasted theirs, and that's kind of when I heard the original story about the mix up with it. And theirs is awesome too. Every Graciano I've had has just been phenomenal. So I think it's probably a happy accident. I think we're going to see a lot more of it being planted in Paso, just based on the quality I've seen so far.
Yeah, the meaty aspects with that violet tone it's like your label, this whole quench and temper thing. It has to do with working with ironworks. Isn't that right, Brennan? It's like, it's so just this hard but soft but wonderful kind of combination.
It is. And it's this whole project that I've done has been quench and temper heat treating, which and the name of that label comes from to put myself through college. I worked at a still factory, and at the still factory I realized real quick that it was extremely dangerous. It was like working in hell because everything was black and dark and dirty, and you had these like bright orange parts. And it was there when I decided, you know what, you need to figure out something you really love doing. So that's where the name comes from.
I got one quick question, Brennan. So is that trellis system, or it's not even trellis, the training system on your vineyard, is that the same as a Goblet, or is it different than a Goblet? Have you heard of that Goblet system?
It's not quite. It could be possibly, I guess. The true form of echelon is really just to limit it to basically 2 spurs.
Okay.
And so you could do, yeah, you could do like a line and have a taller stake and then tie it up. And then I would consider that's more Goblet. It is kind of Goblet-ish, but it's again, for me, it was making sure that I had more vines and less vine.
Right.
So
yeah, it just looks like a Goblet.
Similar.
I've never seen that except a few places. It's rare in California, right? So that was why I thought maybe, but cool, it works. Obviously it works.
Yeah, it's some awesome stuff, and I really enjoy that.
Yeah.
So I'd like to move on to
Thank you.
Last wine, which is the San Simeon Petite Syrah from Paso, 2017. Note a little sticker here, Rebely Family American Winery of the Year in 2018. wine enthusiast. Congratulations. But Anthony, go ahead and talk a little bit about this wine.
Yeah, so I mean, I've been a Petite Syrah fan for a long time, and I think that there are very few places in California that really do it well. And why? So, you know, for those viewers, I'm sure everybody on this panel knows it, but for those viewers who don't know Petite Syrah and where the name comes from, we'll at least give a little quick history. So it's actually from the Rhone Valley. So it is a Rhone variety. And a Dr. Durif, actually, with D-U-R-I-F, he crossed Paloursan, which is kind of an obscure varietal that I don't think even is around anymore, with Syrah, and created his own cross, which was called Durif. Well, it didn't do well in the Rhone because it's a very thin skin and a very tight cluster. The berries are very compressed. And when you'd get a rainfall that would come through during the harvest, which does happen in the Rhone, the clusters would rot. And so it really never was successful, but somehow somebody, you know, suitcased it, took cuttings and brought it over to the United States and didn't know what the heck it was. And someone came up with the name Petite Syrah, maybe because it had some Syrah-like qualities, but looked different, or who knows exactly. But anyway, the DNA testing came back, you know, whatever that was 10 years ago, and showed that it is actually Durif. So I think just Paso Robles, as if you look at climate, you look at the, you know, typically drier harvests, right, allow you to really ripen the varietal. And so, you know, what are the tricks? I think one of the hardest things is certainly getting that balance on this varietal, because if you get it too hot, you know, it can turn raisiny very, very quickly. I mean, this cluster, we'll have raisins on it. So, you know, one thing that we do a lot of is how we treat the fruit coming out of the winery. So we, if it's a hand-picked lot, we run it through a palanque, small destemmer that really does a good job of getting rid of raisins. And if we're machine picking, we're also running it through a palanque machine with a destemmer built in. So a lot of those raisins don't even make it into the fermentation, which is really hard to do because, you know, Petite Syrah is just typically crazy looking clusters at times and can have that raisiny. So canopy management, again, is really important, keeping that sunny side with a good amount of leaf cover, that afternoon sun, while giving a little morning sun openness to prevent rot, even from morning humidity from fog, and that we still get during the growing season. But I just think blackberry, you know, that big blackberry, even a little bit of blackberry compote, if you will. And if, you know, as we've gone out and, you know, we know Cabernet Sauvignon is still touted as, you know, the king of California, if not the king even now becoming of Paso Robles. But I just think so many consumers that want a big wine with dark color and big flavor, Petite Syrah is that. And, you know, one of the things in the winery that's changed is, you know, we owning our own vineyards now, certainly we're controlling the vineyard process better than ever before. But even in the winery, where when we were doing custom crush and not making wine in our own facility, you'd have a tendency to rougher wines. You know, the sanitation wasn't as good, so you could get some dirtier characters. What I like is, since we've had our own facility, is the perfumey, the noses are much cleaner, and the mouthfeel, you're not also getting extremely tannic wine. You know, Petite Syrah can be so tannic if you over extract. And I think that the style has evolved now to where, like Zinfandel, you know, Zinfandel 10 years ago, I mean, Turley was in that as well. Everyone was making 18% alcohol Zinfandels, right? That was this huge trend of big, giant alcohol. Well, with better farming and new techniques in the winery, yeah, still, look, let's be honest, we're in Paso Robles. Alcohols are going to be 14.5, 15, 15.5, whatever. That's just reality. But to find that balance point where you still have not this overly jammy fruit character, but you're still maintaining some of the fresher fruit. And we found that actually the El Pomar area and even Creston can do really well, again, if you make sure your canopy management is properly done.
And I would like to say is that Petite Syrah, I think from the Creston district or from Geneseo, from some of our kind of Eastern AVAs is really excelling. It seems like it does really well. Wouldn't you say, Anthony LaDuca?
I would absolutely agree. I think some of my favorite fruit that we source is some Petite Syrah from a vineyard called Defiance in the Creston area, and it's just absolutely phenomenal. I look forward to it coming in every year, and just, I mean, it's huge, massive. It stains all of our bins and stains my labware, anything like that, but it's still just so well balanced. It's kind of where, and God, it's just phenomenal. So I love what Petite Syrah out of the Creston area.
And this Petite too is, it's not massive by any means.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually, I mean, if for Petite Syrah anyway, almost quite delicate.
You know, we want it to be, I mean, again, the wine needs to show without, I think, hitting people over the head. And I think that's been part of Petite Syrah's dilemma is some people have had it and it was so tannic that they were afraid to go back to it. So I think what we've tried to bring out is mid palate. And I think if you can calm the tannin down and really allow some mid palate to develop, you're going to give people that plushness and that roundness that they want without the sandpaper finish that can come from Petite Syrah.
Yeah, it's a really just totally delightful wine. And I'm so glad that actually you chose to share this one, because I know we went back and forth a little bit on what it was gonna be, but this is a great wine. So thank you so much. We are a little bit over time, but I still want to give all of my, I mean, can you imagine an hour just flew by like that, right? I want to give you guys just a quick opportunity to say anything that you want to share. You got something coming up? Are you doing a virtual tasting? Are you guys doing those types of things? Let's start with Anthony LaDuca.
Yeah, so we're, we just, all of Paso just got moved back to purple tier. So we're excited to be able to do our outdoor tasting again. So we have our little terrace outside. So we're starting to take reservations again for that. Timing with the weather, not ideal because it's dumping and not a lot of people want to be sitting outside, but that is something that we're doing. And then we're also trying to do Facebook live tastings every other Friday, just so we'll get in front of some people. And, we try and either break down some wines or do little blending seminar type things. But yeah, we're just trying to keep people entertained. We're a little quiet ourselves. We don't get a lot of human interaction now without people coming in constantly. So it's great to have some interaction. So this has been
and what's
awesome.
the website? Did you freeze?
I did freeze. Did you not hear the last of it?
Right on. So Anthony Rebely, what do you have coming up?
What's coming up? So the restaurant is back in business in Paso for outdoor dining, but of course with this weather, but hopefully we'll see that. In Los Angeles, the restaurant will be back with outdoor dining. We've had a tough time here in LA with our own city shutting down restaurants, unfortunately, for a very long period of time. So that's really exciting to get our employees back up and going, because that's been the hardest part, frankly, of this whole thing. But no, I think it's just more of constantly promoting this area, right? We've got to keep the word going and getting people to come. And as tourism comes back to Paso, we need to be pushing it, and then just exposing more customers to the wines of Paso Robles, period. So
excellent. What website? Throw that out for everybody.
Yeah, SanSimeonWines.com or RebelyWines.com. Either one of those will work. Actually, I have a brand new website. So San Simeon Wines just launched last week, new website. So there we go.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Anthony LaDuca, we froze a second ago. Toss out your website before we go over to Brennan.
Me.
What was your website?
Inclusewines.com. Yeah, and you can go through and make your reservations or any wine purchases, anything you need to there. And we've got willing and able staff ready to fill all your orders and do everything for you.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And so Brendan Stover with Turley Wine Cellars, but also showcasing a Quench and Temper today. Tell us if you've got anything going on over at Turley and at Quench and Temper.
Yeah, definitely. Along with the other gentlemen, the tasting room is scheduled to reopen by reservation and also weather permitting. And then we just did our spring release for our mailing list customers. And so I would encourage people to sign up on the mailing list. And I know the head winemaker, Tegan Pasalacqua up in St. Helena, has been doing quite a few Zoom tastings and meetings. And yeah, the website is turleywinecellars.com. And then for my project, because it's such a small project, it's available just for my mailing list clients. And so you're welcome to go to quenchandtemper.com and sign up and purchase wines that way.
Cool. Thank you very much. Hey, before we go, we had a question that I missed because it was over in the Q&A, not in the chat. But Brennan, for you, on the old vine zins that you showed from Turley, those pictures of the pruned vine, somebody wants to know, what's the trick to get the vines to look like fingers pointing to the sky?
Can you repeat that again, Chris?
What's the trick to making the vineyard, the vines look like fingers pointing to the sky when you prune them?
Yeah, so it's basically, you know, pruning's a really intellectually fun thing to do because it's like bonsai training the vines. And what we try to do is we try to create a wagon wheel of sorts so that all the spurs are all on the same level and not on, you know, above one another. And yeah, it's just a matter of selection. And with these old vines, you usually have nice selections where you can get the spurs that want to point straight up to the sky.
Cool. Right on. Thank you. Thank you for answering that. And thank you everybody for tuning in again to another Paso Wine Hour. I want to thank my panelists, Brendan Stover over there at Turley Wine Cellars and Crescent Temper, Anthony Rebely with San Simeon Wines and the Rebely family, of course, and Anthony LaDuca with Ecluse Wines. Thank you all for joining me. We will have one more, or not one more, we will have another Paso Wine Hour next week on Thursday. We are going to be talking about the restaurants in downtown Paso. As we were just noting just now that we're back in that purple tier, we're able to be open again, and just coming up on Valentine's Day weekend, which is normally a big restaurant type of event. Everything is outdoors. So I thought I'd have a few of our restaurants come on and talk a little bit about what's happening with them in this world of the pandemic, but also a little bit of their history and maybe a little bit of their kind of food philosophies and wine and food pairing. So join us for that one next week. And then the following week, I think we have a show possibly on a bunch of Chicago connections, and we've got some winemakers all from Chicago that are going to be joining us. I just thought that'd be fun. So I know a few of you are watching from over there in that part of the US that's really cold right now. So thank you again, everybody. Cheers.
Thanks, everybody.
Toast.
Cheers.
We'll see you next time. Thanks a lot.
Thank you.